Good evening. Welcome to the Board of Education General Meeting of April 20th, 2015. I'd like to welcome our very full audience this evening. We have a lot of folks that we're honoring this evening. We have some student artists. We have a very special Golden Apple winner this evening. And we have folks here from Riley who are giving a very generous gift to the Livonia Public Schools. So we welcome all of you this evening. This is a regular meeting, which we also term a voting meeting. For those of you who are sticking around and paying attention to some of the business portion of our meeting, you may see less conversation than you might expect, and that is because at a regular meeting or a voting meeting, these items before us this evening have come before us at least 2 other meetings for some thorough discussion. So while you may see less discussion than you might have planned on, don't be surprised. It's because it's come around the block at least twice already. If you are interested in more discussion from the Board of Education, some of the meetings you may want to tune into would be the Committee of the Whole meetings. All of our meetings can be found on our website, livoniapublicschools.org. If you go to the School Board tab, you can go right down and it will give you a drop-down of our meeting dates and our agendas. So if you're looking for more discussion on some of the issues, Committee of the Whole meetings are some that you might want to pay some specific attention to. We will be breaking also after item 3C on our agenda this evening so that we can take a few minutes to congratulate our honorees. If you would like an agenda for the meeting this evening, they can be found on the counter just outside the door. If you're at home and you would like an agenda, you can again go to livoniapublicschools.org and hover over the School Board tab, and you can get the drop down to our agenda and follow along that way. If you are here this evening to give any comments to the Board of Education, if you could please fill out a blue slip. They can be found on the podium right here, or they could also be found on the counter outside, just outside the doorway. That would be helpful. That way we'd have record of your participation this evening. We will begin with the first item, which is our roll call. Mrs. Bonifield, can you take the roll for us?
Mr. Centers?
Here.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Here.
Mr. Johnson?
Here.
Mrs. Laura?
Here.
Mrs. McDonald?
Here.
Mrs. Bonifield is here. President Burton?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Mr. Centers, can you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight?
Gladly. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item on our agenda this evening is 3A, our art program, and we'll be hearing from Mrs. Jenkins.
Thank you. Good evening, President Burton, members of the board, Dr. Liepa. Contrary to popular belief, art isn't always the product of paints and brushes or pencils and paper. As you'll see from tonight's student art gallery presentation, art can be created by the skillful click of a mouse and the vision in the artist's mind. As we continue with our monthly student art gallery program tonight, we are featuring the computer graphic design work of 5 students who are enrolled in Messina Ormsby's graphic design course at the Livonia Career Technical Center. Mrs. Ormsby's students tackle creative assignments that include designing restaurant menus, commercial packaging, posters, calendars, you name it. It was probably difficult to select only 5 works to be recognized this evening, but it is my pleasure to introduce you to the student artists at this time. Each of our students are receiving a certificate, which reads, the Livonia Public Schools Certificate of Recognition, Student Art Gallery, Featured Artist, selected to represent the Livonia Career Technical Center's graphic design program at the Board of Education office, dated April 20th, 2015, and signed by myself and Dr. Liepa. And first up, we have Autumn Dixon, who is a senior at Churchill High School. Congratulations, Autumn. And which piece is yours? You can step right around here.
All the way to the left. It's called Avatar.
Avatar. Okay, that's very neat. And I'll have you, and we'll hold our applause until all 5 students come up. And if you could stay right here with us, okay? Next up, we have Thomas Hamilton. I'm not sure if Thomas was able to make it tonight. I didn't think so. Okay, we'll make sure Thomas gets his certificate. He is a junior at Franklin High School. And Caitlin Murphy. There you go, Caitlin. Congratulations. And which piece is yours?
The top left one, the celestial tea box design.
Okay. Everyone could hear that. It's a celestial tea box design. That's neat. I paid close attention to that one. I thought, what is this? Next up, we have Leah Strayhorn. Leah is a junior at Churchill, and Caitlin Murphy is a senior at Stevenson. There you go, Leah. Congratulations. And which piece is yours?
The far right vocabulary matters poster.
Okay. Very interesting. And last but not least, we have Joseph Wolfram, who is also a senior at Stevenson. There you go. And which piece is yours?
Mine's the middle calendar.
Okay. Very bright. That's a spring 2015 calendar he designed. And I hear that copies have been made for each of the board members that you'll be receiving later in the week.
Oh, wonderful.
Okay.
Cool.
So please join me in congratulating these wonderful student artists, and thank you for sharing your work with us tonight. And I'd like to mention also that the LPS Fine Arts Festival is happening as we speak at the Livonia Civic Library through the roughly the end of the month through, I think, April 27th. So stop by and check out the more than 600 pieces of artwork by students from every school in our district at the main library. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. And many of us have said this before, but it bears repeating. I am absolutely amazed at your talent. It's a talent that, speaking for myself, I don't have 1 ounce of what you guys have that you can produce, and it is truly amazing. And thank you so much for sharing your gifts with all of us. It's really appreciated. The next item on our agenda is item 3B, a gift from the Riley Upper Elementary PTA. And Mrs. Jenkins.
Okay, thank you, President Burton. Every so often, we are reminded of the great things that are happening behind the scenes at our schools when we see a number like $24,340. That number represents a lot of hard work on the part of the Riley Upper Elementary PTA and the entire Riley community. It's my pleasure to bring this gift, this impressive gift to you tonight for approval, for acceptance. The Riley Upper Elementary PTA has gifted this total amount as a result of fundraisers for things such as activities for the Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports Program, or PBIS, the Battle of the Books program, March's Reading Month activities, Service Squad, the 6th grade celebration, lobby furniture, and classroom support materials. Joining us tonight, I'd like to introduce Melody Provencher, who is not only a music teacher at Riley, she's also the PTA president. And Mrs. Cindy Scott, who is the principal at Riley. Ladies?
And while they're making their way to the podium so we can facilitate discussion, I'm going to go ahead and ask for a motion on this item.
President Burton,
Mrs. Jarvis.
move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District accept the generous donation totaling $24,340 from the Riley Upper Elementary PTA to Riley Upper Elementary School.
Support.
Thank you. We have a motion by Mrs. Jarvis, supported by Mrs. Bonifield. Good evening, Mrs. Scott.
Good
Welcome.
evening. I'm so excited to be here tonight. It's been a wonderful year with our PTA. And yes, I'm Cindy Scott. I'm the principal at Riley. And this is Miss Morgan, the assistant principal. And we really want to thank Dr. Leopa and President Burton and the board, as well as the cabinet, for giving us this opportunity to recognize all of the efforts and the dedication that have been put forth by our Riley PTA, as well as of course the parents are part of that PTA, but the parents and the volunteers that have made it all possible. And tonight we have with us 3 people who are really an integral part of not just the PTA board, but also part of volunteering a lot. And so you'd think, like, I introduced the president first, but I'm first going to introduce that her daughter, Elizabeth Provencher, is with us almost all of the time, helping in some manner. And then, but we do have Melody Provencher, who is the PTA president, and then we have Jennifer Thomas, who's the corresponding secretary with us tonight. Thank you.
And also our membership chair.
Oh,
She's our membership chair.
and our membership chair.
So now I guess I get to say a couple of words. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Dr. Leopa, President Burton, school board members, cabinet. So great to be here, and it's so wonderful to be a part of the Riley PTA, and I'm so glad I get to be here to represent all those people. I work with a really awesome leadership team, Mrs. Scott and Mrs. Morgan. The Riley teaching staff has been very supportive and gets involved with our PTA functions, as well as a great PTA board and energetic committee chairs, hence the large amount of money we bring to you. With the support of our Riley parents and community, we had an extreme success with our fundraising this year. Our main fundraiser was selling the mixed bags, which are made of recycled materials. And so we sell all these different size bags, and it's just a great fundraiser. We had a couple of events also, which produced a little bit of extra money, which we went to a Whalers game, sold tickets to that, and that was just kind of an easy fundraiser. And we have this really wonderful activity that we started last year, that Pizza Pop and Paperbacks. And with Pizza Pop and Paperback during Reading Month, and it's a chance for kids to exchange books, play books bingo, and then we have every classroom makes a basket. And one basket might be a spa basket. The best ones are the gift card basket and the lottery basket with all lottery cards in. And people buy dollar tickets and put it in, and it's supposed to be just a fun family night out, but it ended up being a fundraiser as well, so that was always nice. And of course, due to the fundraising from the Riley PTA, we were able to continue to support all those items that Mrs. Jenkins mentioned in her presentation. We were the biggest one, I think, was that we were able to dedicate some monies to each staff member so that they could support learning within their classroom environment. And also, we do have a renovation coming up next year. Riley is on that list. And so we were able to support some new lobby furniture to help create a nice, inviting area for the lobby. So we are most grateful for your acceptance, I hope. You haven't voted yet, of this gift. And so thank you very much. We appreciate that.
Thank you so much. Mrs. Preventure, before you sneak away, board members, do you have any comments or questions for our Riley folks?
Just thank you for everything. Fantastic. It's a lot of work and a lot. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Johnson.
Just so that Melody is the driving force behind the string fling.
No, not, but yeah, okay.
Just so that President Burton cannot weasel out of this, I understand that she has committed to be the guest conductor at next spring's event.
Next year.
Yeah. I want that on record so that everybody knows that.
I need a little refresher course before we get there.
Something to do with the fact that you did it last year and Dr. Leopa did it this year.
You betcha.
All right, you got it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Gifts from the PTA are always welcome, and without our PTAs, our schools couldn't do so many of the cool icing on the cake type things that we have come to expect with Livonia Public Schools. When you see donations totaling dollar figures of $24,000, even for our Livonia PTAs, that's an astounding number. But thank you so very much for your generosity of the Riley PTA and the whole Riley community that contributed toward that. It's really amazing. Thank you very much. The next item on, I'm sorry, we need to vote.
Need to vote.
It's kind of funny to vote on such a thing, but yeah, we do need to vote. Mrs. Bonifield, would you please take the roll?
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mrs. Bonifield says yes. Mr. Centers?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Laura?
Yes.
Mrs. McDonald?
Yes.
President Burton?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Now our next item on the agenda is item 3C, our Golden Apple Award winner. And may I have a motion, please? Nope, sorry.
Nope.
Sorry, hold on a moment, please. Got my motions a bit mixed up. Mrs. Jenkins.
Thank you, President
you.
Burton. Tonight is my pleasure to introduce our latest Golden Apple recipient. As you know, the Golden Apple Award is issued to someone who contributes in an outstanding way to the school district by going above and beyond the call of duty to support our students, parents, and staff here in Livonia Public Schools. Tonight, I'm pleased to introduce Mr. Stephen Mack, who is the building supervisor at Emerson Middle School. Join me in welcoming Mr. Mack. If we could have him come up to the podium. All right, congratulations. What a nice welcome. You have quite the fan club here tonight. I'd like to start off by bragging just a little bit about Mr. Steve. First, I'd like to mention that the nomination was submitted by the entire staff at Emerson Middle School, and this is quite unusual. I've seen quite a few of these so far, and this is the first time I've seen that. The nomination includes comments from a variety of staff members, and it's 3 pages long, which is also kind of a first for me here. I'd like to point out just some of the highlights in that nomination, if I may. The staff notices that Steve really takes ownership of the school, keeping it clean, safe, and welcoming. As stated by Assistant Principal Matt Moll, he makes Emerson literally shine. From keeping the sidewalks clear in the winter, the hallways tidy, to magically transforming the cafeteria to its normal state following each lunch period, Steve takes his job seriously and does so with serious joy. The Emerson staff collected 4 pages of comments about Steve and submitted the highlights in the nomination. The accolades were best summarized by staff member Jan Leach, who says, "Steve takes great pride in Emerson. It is like his own home. His eyes are always looking back and forth to be sure that everything is in place. I have worked for LPS for a long time, and I have never seen someone work as hard as Steve Mack. He rarely sits or stands still. Always on the move, always willing to help. Whether it is his job or not, it doesn't matter. Steve is very responsible and dedicated. He can multitask and is willing to take over new responsibilities and work without hesitation, and he contributes creative ideas. He does things that count, but never stops to count them." I like that comment. It's neat. And with that, I'd like to invite Emerson Principal Ann Owen to the podium to join us. Ann would like to say a few words. Welcome.
Good evening. In addition to the 4 pages, I want to add just a few comments. And as I was sitting there driving in the last couple days trying to figure out how I could sum it up, I would say if everyone was able to have a little of Steve Mack in their life, the world would be a better place. Steve is one of the kindest, most patient people that I have ever had the pleasure to work with. From feeding our annual flocks, and I say flocks of baby ducks, and making sure they always have food and water, to checking the roof drains to make sure that we don't have leaks over our heads. He really, truly does take care of us like we are his family. And I only wish, quite frankly, this evening that we would have a bushel basket of golden apples to give him and, quite frankly, his family, who he represents and does just a marvelous job at all times.
Thank you. We have one more person who'd like to say a few words. And now I'd like to invite President Burton to the podium. And President Burton will present the actual very special golden award. There's also a pin, golden apple pin taped on the back here. There you go. Whoops. This doesn't want to stay, does it?
As is appropriate, beyond just a certificate, this is mounted, is ready to hang somewhere, hopefully in honor of your choice. It is my honor to present this certificate to you for the Golden Apple Award winner. Steve Mack is a proud product of Livonia Public Schools, as his siblings been, and his family still is. Some of this is a repeat, but it bears stating again. When I was reading through the nominations, the several pages of nominations, several things really jumped out at me. Steve often comes in early and stays late to make sure that the building is both safe and warm and inviting for the hundreds of people who use that building every single day. Several staff members gave some specific examples that I thought were just really, really warm and really brought this whole nomination home. Staff member Lisa Wilson noted that Steve has embraced our Gleaners partnership for the past 2 years and has accepted the mounds of food in receiving without aggravation or complaints about the extra work it causes. To Steve, these tasks are part of his mission to care for our most vulnerable students. He shares our vision to help students in the community. In his gentle, quiet way, he is a very important leader in our school. Steve is also very proactive and anticipates needs even in the summertime when the rest of us are off on vacation and not thinking a whole lot about school. Elaine Kramer and Art Cowling report that Steve makes sure that all the classrooms and cafeteria have what's needed for Camp Emerson and Emerson Edge. He has other projects that he needs to do during the day, but he first makes sure that all the staff and the students feel comfortable. And I have to repeat what Mrs. Jenkins just said because it jumped out at me also. Jan Leach did sum it up best when she said, "He does things that count, but never stops to count them." That is the epitome of a Golden Apple Award winner in Livonia Public Schools, and it's my honor to present this to you, Steve. Thank you so much for your dedication.
All right, I'll try not to cry. Short speech. I would like to thank the Emerson staff for their nominating me for the award. Thank you. I'd like to thank Dr. Liepa, the Board of Education, and the board office staff for approving it. I greatly appreciate that, and I humbly thank you. I'm okay, Ma. I'd like to thank the Emerson Evening Custodial staff, Eric Putis, Bruce Clausen, and Mo Pinard. Thank you guys for all your hard work, day in and day out. Not only do you make work enjoyable, but you make my job easier. Thank you guys, I love you. I'd like to thank my mom and dad for teaching us the importance of hard work and good work ethics. Mom, thank you, I love you. I'd like to thank my mom, my brothers and sisters, my nieces and nephews for coming out and supporting me. I am truly blessed to come from such a large, loving, and supportive family in good times and bad. I'm one of 10 children who all graduated from Franklin High School from 1969 to 1988. Patriots always true. Thank you.
We are going to take about a 10-minute break right now to congratulate our honorees of this evening. Contrary to what good moms, like Steve's mom, taught us all, that it's rude to get up and leave, at the end of this break, it's really not rude to get up and leave. If you'd like to, you're certainly welcome to stay for the rest of the couple hours of our board business. We don't mean to be rushing you out the door, but if you have other commitments this evening, you're certainly welcome to take a break at that time. But for the next 10 minutes or so, we're going to mix and mingle with our honorees and congratulate them once again. We'll meet you back in about 10 minutes. The board is at recess. from our April 20th regular meeting. We are on item 3D, written communications. Does anyone have written communications they would like to share with the board this evening? No. Okay, we are on to item 3E, audience communications. For the benefit of those who may be new to how this system works, audience communications is a time when the board has set aside time to listen to citizen comments that they would like to present to the board. It is not a time for a question and answer session, seeing as sometimes the board may or may not have any or complete information on a situation, but it is a time for us to listen to comments from the public. We do ask that everyone strictly adhere to a 3-minute limit so that we can respect anybody who does wish to address the board. First blue slip that I have is from Jody White. Jody, would you like to address the board? And members of the board, Mrs. White, just before we came back from recess, gave me some paperwork. I don't know that it went to all of the board, so I will make copies for all of the board members so that everyone has the same documentation.
Okay. I'd like to hear this.
Hi, Mrs. White. This is Julie Tefelsky from Churchill High School. I'm Mitchell's biology teacher. Mitchell and I had a couple of conversations today about some things that are going on at Churchill, and I don't want to go into detail over the phone.
Because I only have some limited, it's a 1 minute and 18-second voicemail that I got on December 10th at 2:31. Nightmare phone call. I immediately grabbed the student handbook and I went to go see Mr. Lewis. So I am really upset of the chain of events that have happened. So I'm going to make it very short and brief. My husband has other things maybe to say, but I'm going to try to say that I believe that the bullies are being protected by the Churchill school administrators and the Livonia police, as a Wayne County judge mandated the retaliating parent to provide evidence to her false allegations written on a January 20th PPO petition about my son. I'm a little frustrated as well as a little confused. I see the rules and the regulations in writing. I trusted them. I counted on them. I felt my children were secure within your school district looking at these written words found in the student handbook. Mr. Lewis didn't want me to bring them to his attention. My experience last semester was much different. Your rules in your handbook were not followed. They were not followed and they were ignored. Per the police report, my son was not only inappropriately harassed and bullied by 3 men at the school, but he was also falsely accused by the younger sister of one of the seniors, who was found in my son's classroom, found in my son's seat, and was found assaulting my son during school hours on December 10th. When the teacher contacted me on the phone that day to disclose the situation, I immediately went to Mr. Lewis with his handbook. I was told Officer Hess is getting involved because it was a criminal act, and once the head of security, John Raymond, became involved, our family was placed in a he said, she said situation with limited resources from Principal McDonald and Assistant Principal Lewis to assist our son. Per the transcripts, which I have copies of, the school administration was telling this girl to get a PPO on our son. Per the police report, the disingenuous sister was not made to attend the evidentiary hearing on February 3rd to prove her false allegations that were promoted by Officer Hess, Principal McDonald, and Assistant Principal Bird without the original complaint given to the Assistant Principal Lewis and the school board directors Winnery and Archibald. I have a copy of the subpoenas that we sent off to Bird, Barnes, and Principal McDonald also, if anybody would like to see them. My question is, if a girl has a boy that blocks her from his friendship due to an inappropriate text, am I to believe that she's going to come to the school administration and make false allegations, and the school does a partial police report? Where is my original paperwork we gave to Assistant Principal Lewis regarding the truth of the situation on December 10th and 11th? Now that the White family has a story in writing reflecting disturbing trend of gender-biased discrimination, I'm humbly asking the school board for two things. I need a legal staff to help my son clear his name due to the due process that was lacking because the girl got more attention than the boy did. And I'd love to do it through peer-parent mediation. There is an epidemic of stuff going on over that school. I was blessed to be a noon monitor for a few months. Things happened. No longer there.
Ms. White, you've hit beyond 3 minutes. Could you please wrap up your
One
comment?
sentence then. Also,
Okay, go right.
within the realm of the authority of the school board of elected parents, who is able to get us the requested police report without any black marks called redactions? because the police says I have to come to my elected parents of school boards to get it. So I'm here begging for help. So, thank you.
Thank you. Our next blue slip is from Jeff White.
I'm just gonna, Jeff White. I'm the father of Mitchell White, and I'm not gonna get into a whole lot of detail. I was just maybe gonna ask if I could speak with Dr. Randy Lipa, maybe in a closed session of some sort in regards to the administration over there at Churchill High School. Went through a lot of different loops through Mr. Lewis and Mr. McDonald. We certainly agree to disagree on how, bulliness from 3 18-year-olds to a 15-year-old should take place and how they should be reprimanded and how incident reports should come out. But I'm going to leave that today with you. There was one question she asked for, and I'll just reiterate that. I've gone through a lot of different details with the Livonia Police Department. They've asked us to come here to you to get the names of these 3 bullies. We do have 2 of them, but we have an outstanding threat there of a 3rd boy. And I cannot get his name, and I do want his name. I do want to press charges. They're adults, and I'm asking for your help tonight.
Thank you, Mr. White. As we said, this is a time that the board listens to comments. It's not a question and answer period. Dr. Lipa, I know you have been following up on this. Can you please continue to follow up on the situation?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay.
You'll get contacted from me.
All right, thank you. You want my phone number?
Actually, I've got, I think, your email, so we can contact Mrs. White and go from there.
Might be a little less emotional if speak with me.
Be happy to.
Okay. So,
You want to give
sure.
my secretary?
734.
I have no further blue slips. Item 3.
We have.
I'm sorry. I apologize. I didn't see anybody else with the blue slips. That's okay. It's usually a first time for folks here. Lacey Mason, welcome.
Hi, I'm Lacey Mason. Each of you should have received a letter from me about a month ago regarding a vehicle accident I was involved in, along with my daughter Ellie, who's 2 years old, and Roseanne Morrow, who's not here tonight. She's a Livonia Police Department reserve officer, and she's on detail tonight, and a Livonia public school bus. In the letter, I asked several questions of you, and at this time, I have not heard anything from any Livonia public school administration or any of you members regarding the questions I asked in the letter. And I was curious if there's a plan to respond to my letter and when I can expect a response.
We'll follow up on that right away. I do remember receiving that, so we'll follow up right away on where we're at with that.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any other people who would like to address the audience? I'm sorry, Mrs. Mason. I didn't notice you there first. Are there any other people in the audience who would like to address the board this evening? All right. Seeing none, we will go to item 3F, response to prior audience communications. I do not have any response to prior audience communications. Dr. Lipa, do you have any?
No.
No? Okay. Next item on our agenda is item 4, consent agenda. May I have a motion, please?
President Burton,
Mrs. Bonnefield.
move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District approve the following consent agenda items as recommended by the superintendent. 5A, minutes of the regular meeting of March 16, 2015. 5B, minutes of the special meeting at March 30th, 2015. 7A, bills for payment, April 21, 2015.
Support.
I heard Mrs. Laura. I heard others down the line also, and we're going to go with Mrs. Laura as seconding that. Are there any questions or comments from board members? No? Mrs. Bonnefield, will you take the roll?
Mrs. Bonnefield says yes. Mrs. Laura?
Yes.
Mr. Centers?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. McDonald?
Yes.
President Burton.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda tonight is item 6, instruction matters. 6A is our class presentation, and we'll be hearing from Mrs. Alice.
Thank you very much, President Burton, and good evening, everyone. Tonight's instruction segment features an episode of CLASS. CLASS is an acronym that stands for Continuous Learning and Student Success. In our CLASS episodes, we take a virtual field trip inside of our classrooms and our schools to see a new initiative, a new curriculum, a new instructional strategy, or assessment practice. Tonight's episode of CLASS features a new and innovative form of professional learning called Learning Labs or Lab Classrooms. The lab classroom provides a setting where teachers experience in-depth and job-embedded professional learning in a collaborative learning environment that occurs over a prolonged period of time. About 4 years ago, we began an elementary literacy initiative focused on guided reading. Our teachers were reading the book, The Next Steps in Guided Reading by Jan Richardson. Our elementary principals were providing book study opportunities for our teachers. We brought Jan Richardson into the school district 3 times for professional development for all of our K-6 teachers on guided reading. And we provided a webinar for our elementary principals to help them and support them in the implementation of guided reading in our elementary classrooms. So now it was time to take guided reading to the next level of implementation. And so our elementary literacy facilitator, Christine Fenkel, came to me and said, I have an idea for this next level of professional learning, and it's called lab classrooms. When you think about surgical theaters, this is where doctors come together and they observe actual surgeries or observations in order to improve their techniques. Well, lab classrooms are very similar to that, in that teachers are learning from each other in a collaborative format. With our lab classrooms, because they occur multiple times over the school year, teachers have an opportunity to observe teachers teaching their students guided reading. They have an opportunity to go back to their classrooms and practice guided reading with their students, and then come back together and share their successes, share their challenges in a collaborative learning format. There are 3 roles in the Learning Lab. There is the host teacher, the facilitator, and the observing teachers. And there's 3 components to Learning Labs. There's the pre-observation, the observation, and then debriefing the observation. In tonight's video, we're going to become familiar with the 3 roles as well as the 3 components while viewing footage of learning labs that have occurred most recently in our classrooms. The other thing that we will have an opportunity tonight to hear is we're going to hear from the host teachers as well as the observing teachers. They're going to share with us their experiences that they've had in the Learning Lab and the significantly positive impact that it's had on their knowledge and their skills for teaching guided reading. So if you'll give me a moment, I'm going to set up tonight's video.
Like any profession, the profession of teaching is always evolving. Many adults will see remnants of their own experience as students in practices that occur in the classroom today. At the same time, observers will notice dramatic changes in the practice of education. There are many factors that influence changes in education. Some include new standards, federal or state mandates, research in education, availability of technology, and societal issues. In a world that is constantly changing, professional learning must have a prominent role. Teachers must have the opportunity to learn and collaborate with their colleagues in order to remain current, refine their instructional practice, and increase student learning. Our goal in Livonia Public Schools is to provide professional learning that increases educator effectiveness, which ultimately improves student learning. As we plan for professional learning, we look to the Michigan Department of Education's Standards for Professional Learning. Michigan's professional learning standards were developed by Learning Forward, a leading national professional learning organization. The current standards were revised in 2011 and reflect new thinking on best practices for educator learning. According to Learning Forward, for professional learning to have the greatest potential to change what educators know and are able to do, professional learning should be based on standards. These standards for professional learning have the potential to change educator knowledge and skills. This results in changes in educator practices and improved student learning results. The Michigan Department of Education also defines indicators for an effective professional learning system. One of the indicators suggests that professional learning should facilitate sustained, collaborative, job-embedded professional learning. In order to more closely align with the state's standards for professional learning and provide opportunities for continuous improvement, Livonia Public Schools is implementing job-embedded professional learning for interested elementary teachers. Job-embedded professional learning provides teachers with the opportunity to collaborate with their colleagues as they examine instructional methods, analyze student assessment data, and deepen their understanding of research-based effective teaching practices. Job-embedded professional learning can have a powerful impact on teacher learning by actively involving teachers in examining their instructional practice and student learning. Job-embedded professional learning creates opportunities for teachers to engage in studying their day-to-day teaching practice and encourages professional collaboration. Teachers also reflect on student learning and the alignment of instruction with student learning needs. These opportunities to reflect lead to changes in educator practice. Job-embedded professional learning can occur in a variety of formats. This video program will feature lab learning for literacy instruction with K-6 teachers. The element of literacy instruction that is the current focus for learning labs in Livonia Public Schools is guided reading. Lab learning in Livonia Public Schools takes place at a school where a small group of interested teachers of a similar grade level are brought together. As the district's elementary literacy facilitator, I facilitate the learning lab experience. I start by identifying a host teacher who is willing to open up the doors of his or her classroom to colleagues and then plan with the host for the learning lab experience. The learning lab is structured to include three major components. The The first component is the pre-observation. In the pre-observation meeting, the teacher cohort meets to learn more about the learning context where they will be observing guided reading. Teachers also delve deeper into their understanding of guided reading by engaging collaboratively with professional resources. As a last step before the observation, teachers set goals for what they will observe linked to questions they have about an instructional practice. The second component is the observation. The observation takes the cohort into a classroom where one teacher will provide a model of teaching guided reading to his or her students for others to observe in a real classroom setting. The observers take notes related to their goals for the observation and also note questions about the guided reading lesson. The third component is the debrief. During the debrief, teachers share their observations, ask questions, and reflect on their own instructional practice. The session ends with teacher goal setting. Teachers plan for actions they will take in their classroom to refine their practice.
The Learning Lab format is really powerful for professional development because it's job embedded and matched to desirable instructional practices. Teachers have a hard time being outside of their classrooms, and they don't want to just sit and get PD. They want professional development that is aligned to what they're doing in the classroom. We know that good PD is teacher-led, collaborative, and ongoing, and the Learning Lab format does just that. Learning Lab has been a really positive experience for everyone involved. We have great teachers in our district, but often teachers don't get a chance to get together and collaborate. And this gives teachers a chance to get together and learn alongside one another. Teachers are here in the morning learning and talking together, and then they get a chance to go back to their buildings and classrooms in the afternoon and try new things out. So they're trying out the new reading strategy. They're making a new exit slip board or trying a new form of note-taking. So it seems like it's been fun and engaging, but also having a positive influence in the classroom.
As teachers, we always have a plan of what we're going to teach our children. However, the children always take us in a different direction. So guided reading today is very similar to that, where I have a plan of what I think the children need, but it's that at the moment, the spur of the moment teaching where we are making the biggest impact. And that really is an art form. And so to be involved in the learning labs gives teachers a chance to come in and see what it's really like. It's not an easy job. It's not something that is prescribed that you can sit and make your whole plan of how your lesson is going to be. You do have a roadmap, you do have a plan, but you have to make those decisions, those critical decisions with the children at that moment. And you have to always be thinking about, what am I going to teach them today that is going to help them tomorrow? Kind of the nature of teaching is that you have to be reflective, you have to be digging in the research, you have to keep changing because our children that are coming to us keep changing. So the more we could work with our colleagues and have a learning lab where we come together and we muck through some of these things and walk away thinking, you know what, I really learned a couple of things from these teachers, and I really gained some things that I need to really think more about my practice and how can I improve.
Every time I prepare to do a lesson, I'm going home, I'm sharpening my tools, I'm reflecting on everything that I do. So even though I've been a teacher for 23 years, I am still constantly making decisions on what I'm doing and reflecting. One other piece that I think is really important in the Learning Lab, and for all educators, is to be confident in what you do. And when you're interacting with other teachers and you're seeing what they're doing, you also have to respect and appreciate what you're doing as a teacher and be confident in the decisions you make. And even though those decisions might be different than someone else's, if it's working for you and your students are making progress, then everybody's successful.
The experience that I had firsthand was being able to work with actual students within the professional development setting, as well as collaborating with teachers on top of that. It's taught me to rethink how to plan my scheduled reading literacy block, and giving me the choice to formulate guided reading groups based on strategy rather than their actual reading level. And it also made me rethink, too, what the rest of the class should be doing. And one of my colleagues made the comment when I was observing her is, what's wrong with just having them read? And for me, myself, I'm usually quite tasky, and I always have to have the students doing something productive. And that just made me rethink that, yeah, what's wrong with just having the rest of the class read?
I liked the way the learning lab was set up in that we had a chapter that we had to study in Jan Richardson's The Next Step in Guided Reading book. And after we studied the chapter, then we met as a group. We had a little bit of discussion within the group, and after we did the discussion, we were able to watch a teacher model some different lessons. After the modeling, we got back together as a group, and we were able to kind of plan our own lesson, and we were able to work with kids that day within the lab. After we worked with the kids, we got back together again, the adults did, and we were able to kind of reflect and say a little bit about what we were going to implement in our own classroom, what challenges we had, and what we wanted to learn next within the learning lab. So it was a really nice format that we had for the learning. I have definitely refined my reading practice. The organization has changed kind of behind the scenes, but then also one of the parts that I struggled with during the guided reading lesson was the day 2 guided writing portion. I wasn't quite sure how it should look, even from all the reading I was doing. I just wasn't sure about that portion of the guided reading lesson. And so in the lab, we were able to not only reread the chapters from Jan Richardson, but we were also able to, again, watch the teachers with a small group of children do the guided reading practice, guided writing practice. And then we were able to practice with our own group of 4 to 5 kids and then get back together and reflect on it. And I feel much more confident in myself in the planning, the implementation, and then the reflection portions of that guided writing portion. And so I think that's where I will draw the greatest benefit is the guided writing section. When the kindergartners in my classroom pick up a book, they not only have their concepts about print very, very well defined at this point of the school year, but they are able to use different strategies. They use their pictures. They get their lips ready. They try to guess at a word if they're not sure of it. They really use a lot of different strategies, and it really is all from sitting down in small groups, doing the guided reading lessons.
Change is the only constant and will continue to be a part of the world of education. Job-embedded professional learning experiences like Livonia's Learning Labs for elementary teachers, align with the Michigan Department of Education's standards for professional learning, reflect current effective practices for professional learning, and impact improvements in educator practices that will increase student achievement. In Livonia Public Schools, professional learning is a top priority to support teachers with adapting to changes and making modifications to their teaching practice as a part of the process for continuous improvement. Learning labs provide a powerful job-embedded professional learning experience that impacts instruction and results in learning for all students.
As you saw in the video, Through the Learning Lab experience, teachers are opening their classroom doors, they're demonstrating and sharing their instructional wisdom and their skills, and they're creating conversations that support deep professional learning in context. The Learning Lab experience helps teachers examine guided reading, study its design, acquire and refine their strategies, and change their instructional practices. When teachers improve their craft of teaching guided reading, our students' reading skills improve as well. And improving student achievement is the ultimate outcome of job-embedded professional learning. Thank you for the opportunity to share this innovative form of professional learning with our elementary teachers.
Thank you. Board members, are there any questions or comments for Mrs. Alice? Yes, Mr.
I'd
Centers?
just like to say how brave of our students. I know a number of students were participating, and it must have been a little pressure on them, one, being recorded, and two, they had a number of teachers watching them go through this process. So, one, it's brave for the teachers to participate and share this with others, and two, exceptionally brave for the students to be part of this as well. So I thought that was pretty exciting.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that comment.
Any other comments or questions, board members? I noticed something similar to Mr. Centers, and it just thought it was poignant to me that that the teachers commented that working with actual students in their professional development was so beneficial. Because so often we think of a professional development day as the day the kids are out of school and the teachers are concentrating on learning their profession better. But I can see how it would be much more beneficial to actually learn, practice right then and there, learn some more and practice some more right then and there. So it seems like it was very beneficial.
And the feedback that we have been getting from teachers who have participated in the Learning Lab is that it is making a tremendous difference on their instructional practices, which is how we are getting more teachers involved in the Learning Lab. It's because it's being spread among colleagues, the value and the power of this type of professional learning.
And so far, is this format only being used in our elementary school and only being used in our English language arts?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Any plans or thoughts to broaden it to other grades or other subject matter?
We are beginning to plant some seeds to move it toward the middle school and support our middle school teachers with the implementation of the MESA units for reading and writing. But of course, we are always looking for teachers to volunteer to participate. So based on teacher interest, we will move in that direction.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
other last comments or questions? All right. Thank you, Mrs. Alice. The next item on our agenda is item 6B, expulsion of one secondary student. May I have a motion, please?
Mrs. Burnham,
Mr. Centers.
move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District expel one Holmes Middle School student, grade 8, for serious violations of Livonia Public Schools Board of Education policies.
Support.
We have a motion by Mr. Centers, supported by Mr. Johnson. Are there any questions or comments from board members? Seeing none, Mrs. Bonnefield, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Centers?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mrs. Laura?
Yes.
Mrs. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Bonnefield says yes. President Burton?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is item 7B, approval to purchase text-to-speech software. May we have a motion, please?
President Burton,
Yes, Mrs. McDonald.
move that the Board of Education of Livonia Public Schools School District purchase a 3-year subscription to Snap and Read Universal, a text-to-speech software program at the total cost of $30,046.00.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. McDonald, supported by Mr. Centers, I believe it was.
Yes.
And thank you. And we will hear from Mrs. Alice on that.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Burton. As we discussed with the board and shared some question and answers with the board last Monday night during the Committee of the Whole meeting, we are bringing to the board a recommendation to purchase a text-to-speech software program. The new online state assessment, which we began last week in our school district as well as throughout the entire state, provides students an opportunity to use a support program called text-to-speech. This support is available to both general education and special education students while testing. In order to give our students some experience with this type of software program, we are making a recommendation to the Board of Education to purchase Snap and Read Universal, which is a text-to-speech software program that not only includes text-to-speech, but also the ability to adjust the text level to the reading level of the student. It has unlimited student and teacher use, take-home rights, free upgrades, free tech support, and free webinar support. If the district supports this purchase, it will allow us to put the text-to-speech software on all of the student computers in all of our K through 12 schools, and that software would be available for use by both general education and special education students. The software program reads English as well as the world languages that are offered in our secondary programs. The IT department has reviewed the software program and they support its purchase, and they have assured me that our student computers have the capability and the capacity to run the software. We're making a recommendation for a 3-year subscription in the total amount of $30,046. And funds for this purchase will come from our Technology Readiness Infrastructure Grant, which are funds that we receive to help prepare for the new state online testing, and this software program definitely meets that requirement.
Sounds good. Are there any questions or comments from board members? Nope. Oh, Mrs. Bonnefield, sorry.
Thank you. You were very thorough and answered several of our questions from the last meeting.
Thank you.
It really is an amazing program, and from what I learned at our last meeting last week, it can read off of any text that you put in front of it. It does not have to be in a Microsoft Word format or anything.
That's correct, yes.
Anything you put in front of it, it can
Will read.
Yep. It's amazing what technology can do, and for folks that may still be out there who might be a little bit skeptical of technology, this is yet another amazing way to bring that piece of technology in and help it directly affect the student's learning. Any other questions or comments? Mrs. Bonnefield, will you take the roll?
Mrs. McDonald?
Yes.
Mr. Centers?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Laura?
Yes.
Mrs. Bonnefield says yes. President Burton?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is 7C, approval of bids for marching band musical instrument from the 2013 bond. May we have a motion?
President Burton.
Mrs. Jarvis.
Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District approve the purchase of high school marching band equipment from Marshall Music of Lansing, Michigan, for a purchase price of $50,104.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Jarvis, supported by Mr. Johnson. And Ms. Abbey.
Thank you very much. Good evening. We are very excited to be bringing forward the purchase of marching band equipment for our 3 high schools. We have attached in your package this evening a list of the equipment that we'll be purchasing. There are, I think, 63 items on that list divided between the 3 high schools. As you know, we did first of all, work with our high school marching band directors as well as our high school staff to have them put together the list of what they needed for this year, and we're hoping to get those purchases in very shortly. If the board approves that this evening, we'll place that order tomorrow and hope to get it in before they start their practice this summer or soon thereof. We did conduct a formal bid. We discussed that bid process at our committee meeting last week, at our finance committee meeting, and we are recommending this evening the lowest responsible bidder to meet our needs going forward. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions or defer them to Mr. Archibald if I can't.
Are there any questions or comments from board members? Mrs. McDonald.
Mrs. Provenger, thank you. I know you're very excited about this purchase.
And Mrs. Herring.
And Mrs. Herring. Oh, I know. All right, I'm sorry.
One of our band directors is here, and I know she's very excited about this coming to the high school.
Absolutely.
And I know Mrs. Wickman and Mrs. Jason would definitely be very excited as well.
Yes, I know it's a long time coming, and I'm excited too. So, that's it.
Alrighty. Any other questions or comments for board members? Mr. Centers?
Well, I just want to thank the administration for putting a little bit of a rush on this and responding to the community. We a couple months back had a lot of people coming out and asking for this. So I'd like to commend them for making sure this stuff gets here and the kids can start using it. Thank you.
Mrs. Bonnefield?
As a marching band parent, I think it's spectacular, and thank you as well for the putting a rush on this, because I know the kids just really appreciate the equipment.
I appreciate that, but it was Mr. Archibald and the staff that did all the hard work to get the list together so that we could get out a really nice, neat, orderly bid and get good responses to it.
Any other questions or comments? Again, the folks who are sitting in this room are abundantly aware, but for those in the public, some of the musical instruments, many of them in our district, are original to the district. They've been around for 50 years.
True.
And you can only repair an instrument for so long before it's just time. And as Mr. Center said, I also would like to thank the folks from Churchill who came out, and so often folks approach the board with a want or a need, and it's frustrating on both sides because we simply don't have the resources to be able to grant it. But this is a case where I would like to thank the administration again, as Mr. Centers did, for basically moving around some pieces of the bond, because these were going to come a couple years down the road from now when their auditoriums came in. But it's a piece that the administration was able to figure out it could work to move this up a couple years to get these instruments into the hands of the kids a little sooner. So thank you also. Appreciate it. Any other questions or comments? Mrs. Bonnefield, will you take the roll?
Mrs. Jarvis.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Mrs. Laura.
Yes.
Mr. Centers.
Yes.
Mrs. McDonald.
Yes.
Mrs. Bonnefield says yes. President Burton.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is item 7D, approval of bid results for bus hoist. May we have a motion, please?
President Burton.
Mrs. Laura.
Thank you. Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District, based upon the recommendation of the construction manager, George W. Auk and Company, authorize the construction manager to prepare the contracts for the transportation garage hoist project for a total cost, including general conditions and fees, of $132,500. Also move that upon receipt of the contracts executed by the contractors and approved payment and performance bonds, Lisa Abbey, Director of Business Services, is authorized to sign said contracts on behalf of the Livonia Public Schools Board of Education.
Support.
We have a motion from Mrs. Laura, supported by Mr. Centers. And we will hear from Ms. Abby on this.
Thank you again. Not quite the same excitement as the marching band equipment.
That's who you asked.
But the mechanics are going to find it just as exciting. Just sorry they're not here tonight. We did bring this forward to the Board of Education at our committee meeting last week to discuss replacing one of the 4 bus hoists. This, as we discussed, is one that is in disrepair and needs to be replaced. We've been using some temporary measures, but we spent some time to figure out the best way to replace this. And this evening, we are bringing this recommendation as really a safety issue. As we mentioned last time, we do use all 4 bus hoists at all times, not only for the repair of equipment, but for the ongoing maintenance, whether it's, changing tires, doing other day-to-day maintenance items, as well as keeping them running and getting them in good condition at all times, or as best as we possibly can. As you know, we also keep spare buses. Just if one comes off the road, we have some spares available to while we're repairing. So, again, we did have a formal bid conducted by our construction manager, George W. Auk. We did go over those results last week. And we are recommending the lowest 2 bidders for both the electrical work as well as the actual purchase of the equipment and installation of the actual hoist in the bus garage. And this would be a sinking fund project. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Are there questions from board members? Mr. Centers?
I would just like to point out to the public that I'd like to thank the administration again for thinking of our maintenance workers and people who are working really hard on these buses. There could have been an option to maybe go with a mobile device, but again, maybe not quite as safe, quite as secure. So making the investment to make sure our employees are well taken care of, very appreciated.
Thank you. And thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, Mrs. Bonnefield, will you take the roll?
Mrs. Laura?
Yes.
Mr. Centers?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Bonnefield says yes. President Burton?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is 7E, approval of waste removal services. May I have a motion?
President Burton?
Yes, Mrs. Bonnefield.
Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District authorizes Superintendent Randy Liepa or his designee to enter into a 2-year agreement for waste removal services with Rizzo Environmental Services, Sterling Heights, Michigan.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Bonnefield, supported by Mrs. McDonald. And we will hear from Ms. Abbey.
Thank you. Again, this was an item that we discussed a couple of times at a study session as well as at our committee meeting last week. You'll recall that the prior to last school year and this school year, we did conduct formal bids for waste removal services. This year, we actually changed contractors. That contractor brought forward a proposal to us for the next 2 years to continue at the same rate that we are being charged this year for waste removal services. We spent some time discussing, and our operations department is very happy with the level of service that we've received from this company. We've really worked very well with them. They've been very flexible in terms of changing if we have a change in a need, whether we need to add some additional services at a particular school, or if we find that we don't need as many pickups, they're happy to reduce it. In other words, they've been flexible in not keeping us to a very specific contract if we don't need that amount of work done. So we've been very happy with both their service and their flexibility. We did discuss the fact that because this is a service, technically we don't need to bid this out, but we did want to bring this to the Board of Education and ask for formal approval so we have as much public transparency as possible. So again, we did discuss this. We are recommending a 2-year extension on their contract, again at the same price and level of service that we have for this current school year. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions or comments from board members? Mrs. Laura?
Thank you, President Burton. I will abstain on voting on this item. I have a family member who recently became an employee with the Rizzo Environmental Services.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments on this item? No? Any down there? Whoops, sorry. No? No. All right. Seeing none, Mrs. Bonnefield, will you take the roll?
Mrs. Bonnefield says yes. Mrs. McDonald?
Yes.
Mr. Centers?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
President Burton?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. The next item is 7F, approval to secure owner's representative to update facilities assessment, May I have a motion, please?
President Burton,
Mr. Johnson.
move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District authorize the superintendent, Randy Liepa, or his designee to enter into an agreement with Plant Moran Cressa to perform an assessment of the school district's facilities for the long-term facility plan.
Support.
We have a motion by Mr. Johnson, supported by Mr. Centers. And we will hear from Ms. Abbey on this item.
Thank you again. Again, this is an item that we began to talk about last fall before we had our millage renewal regarding the sinking fund. And what we are looking for, just back up a little bit with history, as you know, the district has always kept a long-term facility plan, and it's a dynamic document. It's always changing based on what the needs of the district are. Several years ago, of course, we did update that, bring that up to date as part of our long-term facility planning, which also became then our long-term facility planning for the bond. And we got that up to date with a lot of input from our community, our stakeholders across the community, our staff, our parents, and our community members. We did bring that long-term facility up to date, and we have implemented our long-term bond plan, the 2013 bond. We are into year 2 of that, and we'll be renovating several schools this summer, as well as our 3 elementaries, a middle school, an upper elementary, and starting on our high school this summer. So we're well into that plan. But we certainly know that even though we started that several years ago and we brought it up to date, it's time for us to begin again to look at that, looking at what are we doing with the bond funds, but also looking at what aren't we doing with the bond funds. So the board will recall when we put that long plan together, there were many, many items that we'll call deferred maintenance that we didn't cover with the 2013 bond. As an example, we're not replacing roofs or very little roofing in the bond. We're not replacing all of the boilers in the bond. In some other areas, parking lots, for example, that are not part of the bond. So as we look forward, we need to continue to monitor those items and look at our resources that we will have long-term, which for Livonia Public Schools is an annual sinking fund. And assuming that continues to be renewed, we need to make sure that we're prudent with those funds, that we have a long-term plan that we put together, prioritizing what our facility needs are going forward and that what our resources are available to fix those things, frankly. So what we've done is ask Plant Moran Cressa, who is our current owner's representative for the bond, to prepare a proposal for us, which we did give you at our last committee meeting and which you have in your board packet this evening. And what we would like Plant Moran Cressa to do is to go out to each of our facilities and analyze and document at each facility the state of that condition of that facility. So again, from the roofs to the boilers to the parking lots to frankly to the fences along the perimeters, they'll document all of that information and put, as well as estimated costs for those things, and then bring that back to the Board of Education, and then we can begin to look at that and look at our resources and prioritize again what our long-term facility plan will be. The reason that we recommended Plant Moran Cressa to do this facility study is because, of course, they already are in our schools every day. They completed 5 schools last summer. Again, 5 schools plus the high school will be maintaining this year. We're already looking at our Phase 3 or third-year schools for our next bond plan. So it really made sense as we talked about it. They're in our schools. They know what our needs are. They know what the bond plan is, so they already know what we will be doing. So it makes sense for them to go ahead and finish this long-term facility plan. So I think we've had some good discussion about how that would look. Paul Terrio from Plant Moran Cressa was here last week and went through that with you in detail. And when he's completed that book or that plan, we'll bring that back to the Board of Education for additional discussion. So this evening, we're looking for approval to go ahead and enter into that agreement. The cost of that is $36,000, which would be paid for out of the sinking fund.
Thank you.
Long explanation.
Okay, it's an important thing. Are there any questions or comments by board members? Nope. Seeing none. Thank you, Ms. Abbey, for the explanation on that. I think it headed off a lot of questions right before we even could ask them. Mrs. Bonifield, would you please take the roll?
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Centers?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mrs. Laura?
Yes.
Mrs. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Bonifield says yes. President Burton?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is 8A, resignations. Ms. DeMann, this is for our information only. This is not a voting item.
That is correct.
Thank you. The next item is 8B, retirements. May I have a motion, please?
Mrs. Burton.
Mr. Centers.
Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District adopt the attached resolution of appreciation for services rendered by Rebecca Blossom, Mary Marcia Bird, Suzanne Crooks, Donna Crozer, Janice Ish, Judy Lee Moikel, Mary Peelan, and Terry Taylor.
Support. And there's one other name, David Fuller, on the list.
David Fuller, thank you.
Support.
Thank you. We have a motion by Mr. Centers, supported by Mrs. McDonald. And are there any questions or comments from board members?
Congratulations.
Yes. Like to, we will be hearing from Ms. DeMann on this item.
Yes, tonight the board has before them resolutions of appreciation for 9 employees and whose names have just been read, who have chosen to retire from the Livonia Public Schools. These employees have dedicated a combined total of 204.4 years to our district, so to the students and the community of LPS. And we really would like to thank them for all of their service and certainly wish them well as they embark on all their new adventures. So it's pretty exciting.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from board members? Mr. Centers?
I would just like to point out David Fuller, who I missed by accident, was actually my high school science teacher. So, I'm sorry, Mr. Fuller.
Yeah, that's right. Getting him back
Is
to the
that
test
Freud?
grade, huh?
That's
That's
it, yeah, exactly.
A little Freudian there.
All righty. Any other comments or questions? All right. Mrs. Bonifield, will you take the roll, please?
Mr. Centers?
Yes.
Mrs. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Laura?
Yes.
Mrs. Bonifield says yes. President Burton?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is item 9, reports for the superintendent. Dr. Liepa.
Thank you very much. Just a few recognitions tonight around the school district. Obviously, we're very busy right now. M-stepping. It's not a new dance step. That's what it sounds like, but it is the implementation of the new statewide assessment system. I want to recognize our staff because it's really been a rather smooth start to the testing period with a brand new test for the first time done online. And so because of the preparation of the staff, it's really gone rather smooth. It's certainly to the credit of many that's happened. Having said that, it's still an extremely long test, and we've talked about it on different occasions that the kids will be being tested on and off right through almost the end of the school year. Ties up a lot of our technology resources, and hopefully after they've implemented this new test for the first year, we'll have the opportunity to provide some feedback and would like to see a much more reasonable test to be given to kids so we can be focusing more on instruction as opposed to this particular assessment. So a lot of good things with it, but at the same point in time, it's just too long of a test. We're testing too many kids, and that's a common theme that you're hearing in education, not just in our state, but across the country, and something that we hope will continue to get looked at into the future. Recognitions, I want to first recognize one of our students, Sam Provolenko. Sam is a student at Rosedale Elementary School in Heidi Pasha's class, and Sam was one of 15 students statewide that had his artwork chosen to be displayed at the Michigan Department of Education.
Wow.
And so it's quite an honor, and we're really excited for Sam and his teacher for that very special recognition. Want to recognize Lori Hyman for being recognized for the getting the Distinguished Service Award, which is presented annually by the Michigan Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association. It is quite a recognition for Lori. As you know, we have 3 remarkable athletic administrators at our high school, and certainly congratulate Lori in this particular recommendation. An award named after an individual that actually, Jack Johnson is his name, and he was there to be part of the ceremony with Lori when she was recognized. So very special recognition there. And back to one of our students, Zach Opsnick, who is a student in the not the ACAP, but the MSc program over at Churchill High School. And he was recognized this year for the third consecutive year to qualify for the USA Mathematical Olympiad. This is a significant achievement, and only 270 students nationwide qualify for this recognition. So congratulations, Zach. He's quite a kid. And last, just want to recognize everybody involved with our Young Inventors Contest that took place at the end of March, and recognize all the people that made that happen, including our business partners. This was actually a partnership with our Chamber of Commerce as we look to continue to provide opportunities for students to experience items in our schools that can help them when they think about their futures in manufacturing technology, skilled trades, and other areas, science, engineering, etc., where these creative young minds can be worked with to actually provide opportunities to where they're going to be interested in these kind of careers in the future. And so thanks to our remarkable business partners, the Chamber of Commerce, Alpha USA, UPS, the AM Rotary, Dozer Cycle Studio, Livonia Kids and Families Organization, Schoolcraft College, and Dave & Buster's, who all came together to provide for the first time this experience for kids. Many of the board members were there, and we had a chance to see firsthand some of the remarkable invention ideas that these kids had. And we had over 300 kids at our middle schools participate in this activity the first year that we provided it, and we recognized the 15 top recognized students with their ideas. So again, it's all about providing different opportunities for kids so they can see what is there for them as they move forward in their lives. So great opportunity, and we really want to thank our business partners for providing that. And with that, we're getting to a close tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda tonight is hearing from board members. Item 10. 10A is the first reading of board policy IHF graduation requirements. Dr. Leopold, would you like to address this item?
Yes, we covered this at our last committee meeting. We actually just completely redid our graduation requirements because of new opportunities through the state of Michigan to provide more flexibility as it related to certain class offerings. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mrs. Alice, who can just briefly provide the summary of what the changes are. And we have a couple technical changes after we made the initial changes a couple months ago. So, Mrs. Alice.
Thank you, Dr. Leopold. Yes, the recommended change we are bringing to the board tonight applies to the world language requirement. The current board policy allows students to substitute 1 credit of world language for a credit in a CTE course, and upon further examination of the language in the legislation, it is not a 1 credit substitute in world language for a 1 credit substitute in the career technical education course, but rather it is a 1 credit substitute of world language for successfully completing a career technical education program. And that program is typically a 2 to 3 hour block of time that occurs throughout the school year or over the full school year. Therefore, we need to amend the language that we have in the graduation requirements for world language to reflect that it is a career technical education program that is substituting the 1 credit. So if you'll take a look at the graduation requirements under world language, the first bullet would remain the same. The second bullet would change to read 1 unit of the same world language and completes a career and technical education CTE program, and the third bullet stays the same. So tonight is the first of 2 readings on this board policy. Mr. Archibald has communicated this change to the high school, so they are in the process of making this change as students are signing up for classes for next year.
Thank you. And that's a first reading, so we will put that on our agenda for a second reading and a vote at our next regular meeting.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from board members on this item? No. All righty. The next item on our agenda is 10B, first reading of Board Policy BHA, Code of Ethics. And again, this is a first reading. Dr. Leopold, would you like to address this?
Yes, actually, every year, to the board's credit, you review your Code of Ethics Policy BHA to see if it needs to be updated or improved upon. And so this has gone on now for the last 3 or 4 years, and the board has spent quite a bit of time on this, actually, the last several months, spending time talking about its Code of Ethics policy and if it needed to be updated. And there are recommendations that are included in your packet for the first reading after the board has spent a significant amount of time looking at potential changes. So again, I commend the board for its work on this because I know how seriously you take not only your board policy, but your responsibilities as board members, and that's reflected in your efforts here. So we're here for a first reading with just a few changes for your consideration.
Alrighty. Are there any questions or comments from board members? No? All right, seeing none, this will be put on our agenda for a vote, or second reading and a vote at our next regular meeting. Next item on our agenda is 10C, second reading of Board Policy EBA, disposition of real property. May I have a motion, please?
President Burton.
Mr. Johnson.
Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District accept the recommendation of the Policy Committee and adopt board policy language per the attached document for the following. Policy EBA, disposition of real property.
Support.
We have a motion by Mr. Johnson, supported by Mrs. Jarvis. And Dr. Leopold.
Yes. This particular policy, again, is something that the board has spent quite some time on over the last several months reviewing. And as it's looked at its overall budget situation and received feedback from the community through its budget policy forums that we held in January, where we got a lot of really good feedback from our community, the board discussed and thought it would be appropriate that any proceeds from the sale of real estate property have the flexibility, at least if the board's current fund balance is below a certain percentage, that it could be used to save programs for students within the general fund. If the amount of fund balance available in the district's general fund is high enough, then it would still maintain its existing policy, which would mean that those dollars would be set aside for one-time purchases. But it did want to provide that flexibility for itself, especially as we've been going on now 10 years of very challenging times here in the state of Michigan for local public school districts. We at least wanted that that flexibility in case it was needed to protect programs for kids. And so that is the change that was recommended in the disposition of real property after we had held the forums to provide that flexibility for the Board of Education. And it's here now after many conversations for a final vote.
Alrighty. Let's see here. I'm sorry. Are there any questions or comments by board members? No? Alrighty. Mrs. Bonnefield, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis.
Yes.
Mr. Centers.
Yes.
Mrs. Laura.
Yes.
Mrs. McDonald.
Yes.
Mrs. Bonnefield says yes. President Burton.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And the last item on our agenda is hearing from board members, and Mrs. Laura is going to handle that for us this evening.
Thank you, President Burton. On behalf of the Livonia Public School Board, I'd like to take this time to first of all congratulate our very talented Livonia Career Technical Center students, Autumn Dixon, Thomas Hamilton, Caitlin Murray, Leah Trehorn, and Joseph Wolf-Ram. Thank you for sharing your work with us, and you are all so talented. We're very proud of you. I'd also like to again thank Riley PTA for their very generous gift of over $24,000 in helping to support student learning at that school. And thank you for all the hard work that goes along with that. It's greatly appreciated. A very special congratulations to Stephen Mack, the building supervisor at Emerson Middle School, for receiving the Golden Apple Award. Very well deserved. He's a very honest, genuine gentleman who spends a lot of time and is dedicated to that staff and the students there. Congratulations to the retirees. There were 9 retirees, 1 principal, 1 assistant principal, 4 teachers, 1 secretary, 1 parapro, and 1 kitchen manager that combined, as we heard, have spent 204.4 years in our district. Thank you so much for all your hard work and dedication to our school district and our students. We made several exciting purchases. We approved them today, but the most exciting, as you can tell we're so excited by many of the board members, was the marching band equipment, and we're so happy to be able to have done that. Mrs. Ellis, thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. The video was absolutely professional, and I suggest we patent that or something and sell it as a commercial to other districts. It was so well done. I also believe it's a wonderful experience coming from an educator, and I think it's going to meet some of our state requirements for choir, which is excellent. And with that, Ms. President Burton, that is my part of hearing from board members.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to add anything? Mrs. Jarvis.
Thank you, President Burton. I know that we already discussed the accomplishment of Zach Obzniak in terms of the National Math Olympiad, but I'd also like to point out that this young man placed number 11 in the Michigan Math Prize Competition this year and has just received a perfect score of 36 on his ACT.
Oh, my goodness.
Fantastic.
Congratulations.
I mean, he's amazing. I remember this kid when he was in elementary school. He's remarkable.
Yes.
Really? Wow. It'll be fun to watch where he goes from here.
Yeah, we'll be hearing about him.
Yeah. Amazing. Any other comments from board members before we close the evening? Mr. Centers.
I'd just like to first acknowledge Ms. Jill Wozniak. It's Administrative Professionals Week. She does so much to keep central office running, just enormously smooth. She's a pivotal part of that. And also all the administrative professionals that are in all the schools, helping our principals, our teaching staff. Their contributions are immeasurable, so thank you for all you do.
Thank you. And thank you, Jill. Jill has rescued us from many perilous moments of I forgot this, or I need another copy of that, or keeps us all straight. Any other comments from board members? No? We have reached the end of our agenda. I wish you all a very nice evening. We're adjourned.